Uh, Good evening. Hello. Firstly, I have to hold my hands up and admit that I didn't catch the series when it released
We noticed.
earlier this year. So I sat down on Monday afternoon to just watch a couple of eps and soak it in, and I watched the whole thing in one go because I just couldn't stop. Hijack, a 7-hour adventure played out in real time. It's nothing short of a masterpiece of tension, a thrill ride from start to finish in a completely fully realised world. Congratulations not only to both of you, but to everyone involved. Welcome, Jim and Ed.
Thank you.
That's
It's got to be the next frame.
You can
next slide.
Okay, you can. Beautiful. Jim, as an exec and creator of the show, working with the writer George Kay, how did you first become involved?
Well, George got stuck on a train travelling from London to Paris under the Channel Tunnel, and he kind of was looking around the train in the moment, saying like, "Oh, if we were here for longer, I wonder how much better I'd get to know all these people on this carriage, and how would the harmless-looking little old lady in the corner react, or maybe this couple over here might start having a row." And it just kind of blossomed out into the idea of like maybe telling that story or a story like that in real time. And we liked the idea of doing it on a plane because of the locked door nature of it, and the claustrophobic nature of it as well. And it lent itself to the real time of the 7-hour flight, and the idea of doing it as every minute, every hour of the story is quote unquote real time. And we'd made a show previously for Netflix called Criminal, which really lent into the kind of the claustrophobia and the forensic nature of it. And so we kind of that was our pitch for the show, and that was what we took to Apple and said like that's the show. And yeah, in fairness to them, they jumped on it straight away.
You'd worked with George not only on Criminal but on Litvinenko, and that's
Yes,
where you first.
That's where we met. Yeah.
Clearly, you're both were destined to do Hijack, given all your joint obsessions with aviation. How was this a dream job for the pair of you?
I think so. Well, I mean, I was lucky enough to sort of get onto Jim's dance card on Litvinenko, and then he made the error of telling me that this was my next project's going to be set on a plane, and and the rest, and like it just sounded like the best thing in the world. And I then had a 10-week shoot on which so I was basically dressed up as a plane every day. So it would be great if we did this, and I've always loved that genre, and aviation is like a passion of mine, and just the idea of trying to do something in largely one location like that. Like how can we keep it visually interesting for that long, and the approach Jim was bringing to it in terms of sort of feeling like we, the audience, were in that pressure cooker with them from the moment the door closed. How do you make that precinct, which everyone is sort of familiar with, like a long flight, feel both believable? Like you want to bump the audience out of the story with it being overly stylized, but also it's got to sort of carry your interest visually and fit in the world of of Apple's sort of standards and the type of look that we both wanted. So yeah, it wasn't an absolute blast.
I'm sure it was. It had its moments. You worked with the designer Andrew Purcell, is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
The nature of it, as you say, that singular timeline is pretty intense, and inhabiting that kind of singular location, clearly prep was crucial. How did you even set about prepping?
Well, the really tricky thing was I was making Litvinenko, the TV series, with Ed for most of the time, where we were also prepping this show, because this show got greenlit whilst I was in prep for Litvinenko, and so we had to kind of sandwich the two jobs on top of each other slightly. But the thing that made that possible was that the main precinct of the show is the aeroplane, and so we knew from day one we needed to figure out how to create the aeroplane believably. And I suppose the benefit of my approach was that I said to Andrew from the start and to Ed, it's got to be a real plane, or it's got to look like it's a real plane, and it's got to be based on a real plane. It can't be our own fantasy version that's going to be like, oh, let's give ourselves more space and so we can put cameras here and cameras there. I was like, no, it's a sealed tin can, and I want it to feel like a sealed tin can. And so I sort of set Andrew off with that challenge, and that was the main nut that had to be cracked, really. And I think, there is a lot of location work on the show, and there's a lot of other sets as well, but that was obviously when we knew 70% of the show was going to be on that set. And so I really just set Andrew off running with that challenge.
Were there any references that you started out with, just with Andrew? Or was it literally, was it just that the authenticity?
Only negatively, and I won't say what they are, but only, and I don't mean that in as a catty way, but like I've seen a lot of things set on aeroplanes, and I don't like it when it doesn't feel, in fact, any claustrophobic space, I don't like it when it feels like the camera is not within the space. And the temptation in our world is to go, well, let's make our lives a bit easier so we can do this shot.
Take the side off.
Let's take the side off, or let's just build it 40% bigger. I've seen shows, my instinct is to go the other way and to make it more claustrophobic, and certainly not to feel like the camera is outside of the skin of the thing that you're in. Because the whole point is all the characters are locked in the space. So the only references that I gave to Andrew was like, watch this, this, and this for what I don't want it to look like. And that's not to say we can't push the look visually, but you've got to come from a starting point of everything's real, and that applies in Hijack. That applied to even to the cockpit, for example. I was like, it's got to be a real working cockpit, because we're going to be in that space loads, and I like everything to exist in camera where possible. So it had to be a fully working cockpit, which was also where Ed was very useful. It couldn't just be, we'll shoot the cockpit scenes in this pre-existing cockpit set that exists in this old airfield somewhere in Sussex or whatever. It needs to, I want to be able to walk from the body of the plane into the cockpit, in continuous action, and be able to look out the windows and it's all there. There's no like, wow, we'll put that in afterwards. So that was the big challenge, really, was setting him those parameters. But I suppose by setting him those parameters, it gave him a strong place to start from, rather than, well, it could be anything, so do what you like.
So given that, I mean, because it's all set in there from the very get-go, or more or less from the get-go, all the way to the end, were there rules that you set in place between you in terms of the way you went about shooting it? Like you say, is that you're keeping it, there was no cheating, there's no...
Yeah, the basic rule was that the camera couldn't be somewhere where the camera couldn't be if we were filming on a real plane.
Sure.
And
at 35,000 feet.
Second?
At 35,000 feet. So
exactly. So we're never
into
outside the plane other than when we were in. So basically, my whole approach is generally sort of perspective, subjective driven. So I want to be with the characters, experiencing it with the characters rather than being an objective viewpoint. Obviously, it's a rule that is sometimes broken, but generally speaking, that's my approach. And so I just said to Ed from the start, I don't want to be anywhere, I don't want the camera to be anywhere it couldn't be if we chartered a plane and taken it up. And we pretty much...
It's really tempting to, pop a window, just lens, and stack people up and things. But actually, as soon as you set yourself those, as soon as you can do anything, then it sort of all fizzles, all of the tension fizzles out. So I think one time we tried to take a window out and it just didn't work. It just didn't feel like the show anymore. I think the audience can tell when the camera is sort of, squished up against stuff. It forced us into, so I think I had 3 separate visits from the physio by the end of it. You just crushed into spaces, but I think it was necessary, and the dimensions of everything were bang on, really. Like we gave ourselves a tiny bit of leeway in the flight deck, but that was pretty much it. And I think looking at all the things we looked at beforehand. Like lots of people have done, you'll do a scene on a plane or an episode on a plane, or a feature on a plane. But to do 7 hours on a plane, broadly speaking, I don't think anyone's done before. So we were determined to, there are things I think you can get away with if it's like a section of your movie, that we just felt we needed the verisimilitude, needed the flexibility to make the plane feel like it was moving, to give it different environments and try and, as much as I was, the way the script timed out, the whole flight ended up just being permanently sort of at midday, which is obviously every DP's dream.
I was going to ask you.
Always was at sunset. That would be great. But so yeah, trying to work in that sort of vibe. But yeah,
it was incredibly sunny in the Hijack world, which is so. When was that decision made? Because that is, as you say, is a bit of a dream.
Yeah, what do you mean? The sort of the pingy.
Well, I mean everything from the
kind of follows Idris around. It's weird. That's following him.
But then even obviously, like you say, it was the majority was on board K829. But see, I have watched it. But even it was sunny in all the other places as well.
Well, the nightmare of that was that we shot for whatever it was, 120 odd days across the year. So we started in, I think it was like April or May, and wrapped in November.
Well, okay.
And the show, if you've seen it, it's a flight from Dubai to London. And we, in the end, couldn't. We were planning originally to go and shoot in Dubai. We didn't in the end. We shot those scenes in Madrid at the end of our shoot.
Right.
And it rained.
Yes, of course.
But everything else we shot across the course of the year. And of course, the story is just 7 hours. It's one day. But we're shooting across every season of the year, and you can see it if you look for it in the show. But we got pretty lucky. There's some stuff that we didn't get so lucky with, and we did literally have to paint out rain from the Madrid stuff, which is mad.
Even just like the essay. How many? There were 35 speaking roles on the plane, and then another maybe 100 essays who couldn't change. Like it's it wasn't like,
and it was COVID as well.
They had to be in, and then they had to keep their. They couldn't get suntans. They couldn't change their hair. They had to. So the whole sort of the machine of getting that show up and running. There were the days, I can't remember how many days we had the absolute full plane loaded. Like we'd obviously try and do like first class days, and but we had somewhere we gave ourselves everything, and that was remarkable just to see the operation required to get that many people exactly the same, like 6 months after we'd started, back on the plane.
That's the problem. When you get on a plane, you've got a plane ticket and you've got a seat.
Yes.
And so it's not like, for the ADs and the SAs, it's not like, normally it's like, oh, we've got a bar scene, or we've got a nightclub scene, or we've got a crowd scene, and we can just sort of dress people in. No, it's got to be the same person. 32F has to be 32F.
Some of them were really excited. And they go, oh, we're going to hang out with Idris. I'm in the economy. For a really long flight, right at the back.
Yeah, and so they were literally doing a long haul flight every single day.
Wow.
Doing an 8-hour, continuous shooting day. And it was basically, it was tough for everybody. And, there are hot. There's one character in the show who was a speaking role, and she had an essay husband. And she has 6 different husbands across the 7 hours of the show.
Yeah.
If you really look, it's just like. But
the crowd third would give us like a little chart each day of who might not have come in, and it was invariably like just all of the people around the you're filming.
It's amazing how many people were testing positive for COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we talked about this a long time ago, but because you talked about the extras and people come and go and people not turning up. Was continuity, and was it a big?
Do you know
issue
what? I thought it was going to be a huge issue. It was actually less of an issue, and actually in the cut we were getting away with quite a lot. Weirdly, one of the restrictions of the show, everyone's sitting facing the front on a plane, right? Forces you to shoot it in a certain way. You have a lot of raking shots, but also the thing that Ed was just saying. Literally, I would arrive on set every day, and the ADs would hand me a seat map of the plane, like you would get if you were booking your seats to go on holiday, with just crosses on every seat where the people were missing that day. And so you're shooting a scene around 2 people like this, and you're told all of the SAs around them are missing. So immediately you start thinking, well, we can't shoot that scene. But actually, we started the sort of claustrophobic nature of the show and the voyeuristic nature of the show meant that we started shooting a lot through seat gaps and using restricted eye lines and restricted POVs. And that meant that actually sometimes you'd be shooting a scene where someone who's 20 meters away is watching someone from over here, and actually we're missing all of these essays, but it doesn't matter because we're lining up a shot through like 20 seat gaps, and that's what makes the shot so great. Or the camera's down in the aisle looking along a giant long like row of emergency lights, and you're just one person just leans out. Actually, the cabin's empty. We've done it as a pickup, you know. But so it meant that when we got to the cut, because of the way that we shot it, we were actually able to surprisingly rewrite and reshoot the show in the cut in a way that I've not been able to do on any other show, because we were able to literally create character bins in the edit for certain characters, because by and large it's a real-time show. Everyone's wearing the same costume, everyone's makeup continuity is the same, and everyone's sitting in the same place, so you could actually use bits of things and completely repurpose them.
We shot, you know, the setup count we were doing was like seriously high. Like I think we were averaging sort of 30 setups a day easily, between of 2 cameras each, and the editor, you know, there's an amazing editing team on this show, so they just had this like wealth of stuff to pick from.
Was the edit happening as you were shooting?
Yeah. So
was that useful?
It's always useful, because particularly we were having to we were trying to shoot chronologically, but inevitably we're bouncing around. Dave Webb, who's cut most everything I've done.
David Webb, is that Jason Bourne?
David Webb is Jason Bourne's whatever the phrase is, assumed real.
Well, he had to go on to do something, I suppose.
That's the real Bourne conspiracy.
I was going to ask about the confines of the set. Did that affect the cast and therefore their performance?
Yes.
I mean, was it so authentic? That
I mean, the way I tried to approach it was sort of heightened documentary, I suppose. So and that's one of the reasons not to break the set. And I said that to everyone. The challenging thing for the cast is that frequently they're on set, they're they're not technically in it, they're not scripted to be in a scene, but they're in the scene because they're in the background. They're in first class. And so a lot of the times it was saying to these actors, you need to be in character the whole time, and you need to think, and you need to be responsible for your own character and your own sort of where you are in the moment of the scene and how you're reacting to this. And in certain classes, certain cabins, that was more apparent than others. But because we weren't breaking the set, because it was a 360 environment, and Ed lit it in an incredibly beautiful but efficient, practical way, I said I want to be able to swing the camera anywhere, and I want to be able to turn around quickly, and I want to grab this and grab that and turn around and move quickly. And so we were able to get a cabin in and shoot a whole run of scenes and stitch 10, 15 scenes together as a giant long run, even though they're going to end up intercut. And what that meant was everyone was able to kind of stay in their seat, stay in character, stay in the mode. Frequently, people wouldn't even know whether the camera was on them or not.
Right.
And I think that comes across in the show in a good way, because I think it feels more like people are reacting live to what's happening around them, rather than it feeling like, okay, we're set up and lit for this shot, which is this piece of this scene. And there's a bit of that in the show as well, of course, but I think our bread and butter was get the whole cabin in, sometimes rehearse the scene without everyone around, and then shoot the scene, bring everyone else in and shoot the scene. Maybe not everyone's even seen the scene, so they're kind of seeing it,
right?
Like they're seeing a fight break out for the first time in front of them. And I think that meant as I said, the strip count was incredibly high. The scene count on this show is very, very high. It's like no scene runs to more than... it's rare that a scene runs over a page,
right?
And most scenes are like, strips.
Yeah, just seeing the strips on the call sheet was like utterly horrifying. How are they still going?
It's when the sides stand up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
But really pleasing when you would cut the Jims. You get all these looks, and and like some of the eye lines are slightly cheated down the length of the plane, but when you get the we'd do a whole action sequence that was maybe happening in economy, and then we'd have a couple of weeks later we'd do business class stuff, and then and you'd see that see them reacting. So as the assemblies would come through, you'd just see these scenes which are already strong just get richer and richer as you just built these like layers of looks, and like Dave and his team are so good at finding just like tiny, they find like the eyes moving like 3 pixels, and then, who would use that just to completely change the emphasis.
Well, I guess
seems
my argument with a script supervisor would be the fact that everyone is on that 180, aren't they? Everyone's looking in that one direction. So even if somebody's...
It was where the backlight actually, the flights from Dubai to London, the sun is off the port wing because it is. And it's a little bit cheated, but essentially it's true to where it would be.
I knew it would be.
And the backlight actually helps tell you where you are in the plane.
Yeah,
weirdly.
Well, that you can sort of see it in there. It really helps. It meant that on the port side, we just always had the harder sun. We changed the angle of it to sort of simulate the plane rolling.
So you had your moving hard light rig as well on that, didn't you?
Yeah. So that was. It was too. I mean, I think ideally we'd have put the entire set on sort of hydraulics and stuff. Sure. We did do that with the flight deck, but it was just way too long a shoot to sort of be able to afford doing that. So I was trying to come up with a way of giving that sense of movement that you feel in a plane as the light moves around the inside. So it helped that the flight did always have the sun pretty much. We did the maths, and it was always basically the same relative to the direction of travel.
I mean, that is mad looking at that now.
It makes me feel.
It was 70 meters long. It's an Airbus A330.
It's also in that photo. It's about 48 degrees Celsius.
Yes,
up in the grade. But so the hard light would move up and down, and Ben Bassell, the gaffer, and Ziggy Jacobs, the lighting programmer, who's a genius, figured out we managed to get these sort of motion control. We used using motion control cameras, but these are motion control winches, so they would position the lights, and then the winches talk to the lights. So as the truss moved, the lights would tilt to compensate. And then each light was focused just on one window. So the effect was that you get parallel beams, so it felt like you had this distant, the point source of the sun. And it was weirdly effective. You get these, you'd look down the length of the plane and see that turn, see all the shapes of the shape of the window light, shape of the window wrapping around the thing, and you go, okay, yeah, we're straight away. When we first loaded the setup with SAs for the first time, and you can see there's bits of volume work we did down the sides. So they were seeing kind of take off from Dubai, which I'd rendered out in Flight Simulator. And the SA's like, what? The set's moving. And I'm like, no, it's a lie. We've tricked you using tricks. But yeah, really pleasing.
You used LED screens almost exclusively for the exterior, for the insides looking out. I guess that chimes with your idea of keeping it as in camera as possible.
Yeah.
But was that at all? Obviously it brings all of that work into prep because you need to then generate your plates. Would it have been easier?
Yeah, it did.
To
not do it.
To not do it.
I basically won't shoot green screen.
Okay.
For lots of boring reasons. The main reason is you're kicking a can down the road.
Yes.
And I get it. But I don't like the school of thought of make choices later. I'm the school of thought of like, no, make the thing feel real in the moment that you're shooting it. Occasionally you might have to for reasons of safety or whatever. By and large, on this show, I knew that the plane is flying at 35,000 feet for most of the story, and therefore I didn't want it to just be blown out windows, and we talked about that from the beginning. So there's got to be something out there.
And that's because there's a scene in our TV show on a plane, but we're in a warehouse. It's, trace the windows and you'll be fine.
So the moving light rig was a huge part of that, and then we knew that in the cabin with smaller portholes we'd get away with quite a lot, which is why the whole of that stage is basically painted as one big infinity cyc. But the real challenge and the real sense of motion in the plane you achieve through the cockpit. So we had the cockpit on a motorized 6-axis gimbal with a 270-degree LED volume around it. There was some procedurally generated content on that, so it was easy enough to generate cloud, sky, horizon, and then the gimbal's doing the movement work of so the horizon's just staying flat. But for the finale of the show was where I suppose we probably had to do the most prep, because in the finale of the show, if you haven't seen it, spoiler alert, the plane flies over central London and flames out and glides the remaining few miles of its journey and lands at RAF Northolt. And I really wanted, at that point, two of the characters, Idris's character and Holly Edd's character, Amanda, are in the cockpit. And I wanted to be able to shoot that scene in the cockpit with those two actors. I wanted to be in there handheld with them, and for us to be able to do this and pan between them from the French side and be seeing that's fucking London out there, and we're not putting it in afterwards. I wanted the actors to be viscerally feeling that they're 500 feet over London, and the only way you can actually do that is it turns out, is to take a helicopter up over London and fly that route.
Right.
Stitch that and then put it on that volume, and a huge amount of prep and a huge amount of technical thought went into it from this man and many other people. And I just sort of went, yes, that looks amazing. Thank you for doing that. It was in the helicopter, which was pretty cool.
We were in the helicopter over, sort of waiting over, the Thames Bell further out, probably at the Dartford crossing, like waiting for permission to go in, and the helicopter pilot was talking to Heathrow air traffic control. At one point, I think he was given permission to say that the hero of what we were filming was an air traffic controller. Permission granted. Quite right too. So we did that with 6 Alexas, and then that all got kind of put on the big volume screen. But it's great because when you're operating in the cockpit, seeing that stuff, you're reacting, and you see the shard go by, and you're like,
you operate
really
for
cool.
it.
Yeah, exactly. You're reacting to it.
You're creeping up to see the horizon rather than just making choices with actors in the space, and then later on going, oh, what would be behind them then? And you don't have all the right interactive lighting. But also just for the actors, we did that landing. We took a helicopter in and flew it a few feet over the runway at the height the cockpit would be if you were landing an Airbus. So that it was like the world's most expensive flight simulator. And actually, we had one of the Airbus test pilots came down and visited us on set, and he was just like, this is like mind-blowing.
Right.
I went and did the flight in a real Airbus simulator to check that the landing was technically possible, and it is. So everything you see in the show is technically possible.
Right.
So I myself, and I like flying, but I'm not a pilot. I sat in an Airbus A330 simulator, and we ran the simulator and had it flame out over central London, and I flew that route into RAF Northolt, gliding, with an Airbus pilot with me telling me what to do, but I did it, right? So I knew that our characters in the show could be able to do it, and I could say to them as the director, this is technically possible, you're not having to fake this, you could be talked through doing this, because I've done it. But what I did in the Airbus simulator, which had full axis motion, but the computer graphics are like
Rudimentary
at best. You're told, oh, you're now flying over the Houses of Parliament. Am I?
Yeah.
It's just green down there. So for the characters in the show, for me and for us sitting in there, it was an incredibly visceral experience, and you're getting therefore better storytelling out of it.
Sure.
Because they're literally going, there's the fucking runway, and it's like, and then you're coming into land, and she's trying to. The actor Holly is literally moving the controls because she's started to sort of, her body has started to tell her it's her doing it, and you can't fake that. I mean, as it turns out, we did, but you're not supposed to be able to fake that.
It makes you think about the moon landings, doesn't it?
Yeah,
It does make you think about the moon landing.
it's easily done. I understand you bought a camera system between you. Is that right?
We did, yeah.
So the DJI 4D, right?
Yeah, that was great. I mean, I'd seen actually during Litvinenko they'd announced that, and it's if you haven't seen it, it's this tiny thing, the little mini stabilized head. There it is. It's gone.
There it is.
It's sort of it seemed as I was dressed as a plane trying to pitch to Jim that I could do this huge show for him. It seemed like it could be, potentially even the only camera. Something that Jim already knew he wanted to keep it within the confines. So I was like, well, what can we do that would have like a big beautiful sensor? We could put nice lenses on it, or they're slightly more limited. And then it was so new that it didn't feel sort of totally safe to use it as the main camera. But we managed to get one after about a couple of weeks that we both excitedly jointly bought, and then we're like kids at Christmas where it all turned up and
Meant to be shooting the
yeah,
show.
meant to be
We're like,
shooting.
everything
Idris is like, do you want to come in and but it was superb. We managed to fit it in tiny places. It cut with. It's actually even better now because you can separate the camera bit from the body bit, so it's even smaller. But you know, in stuff like this and the fighter jet, that's all 4D. I mean, we got so. I felt so confident with it in the end that we were intercutting. You know, you'd have like two sides of dialogue. One would be on the Alexa and the other would be on the 4D, and it was fine. We were lucky to have the DIT was like live grading that show, so it on set it certainly wasn't distracting. It all looked fine, and the colorist was. We had no issues with that. It's just so sort of weird, you know, so we're so used to just having a camera, it's like all the accessories built on, it takes a while, you want to change the mode and it takes a while, and so when you suddenly got something that just comes out of the box and it's ready to go and it can do sort of anything, that was remarkable.
Yeah, I just keep saying that we literally wouldn't have been able to make the show without it. Because the Steadicam, for example, couldn't fit through the gaps.
Yeah, we tried. Yeah, I mean, in prep, Jono Tyler, absolutely amazing operator, who we also couldn't have made this without. But we made him in the rental house, like laid out a sort of assault course of what we thought the narrowest choke points were. And he could get through them, but just sort of not at speed. And so much of the show, certainly the bits where you're going up and down the, that's when you're chasing Idris or chasing a terrorist, etc. And yeah, the 4D was, and because it was, I could operate on the wheels remotely, and Jono would have like, the camera on a pole or something, and so we could go low to high and just have all these tiny things, and to be able to drop it down in between seats and then pan 90 degrees and be under the seats and track along that way. There's no other system that you could get the quality of those sorts of shots and be able to fit it in the space without ripping everything out.
One of the revelations a bit for me was car work, because I can't stand low loaders or process trailers of any sort.
No.
And I like to try and shoot in real vehicles with the actors driving where possible. There's actually, for a show set on a plane, there was a fair amount of driving in it as well. Some of it fairly prosaic, but nonetheless, like, you can put the 4D, you can jam it, in the cab.
Yeah.
Like, I can sit in that same car just out of shot with the actor driving, and it's undeniably real. Again, which is just what I love, and but it's the speed of it.
Yeah, you can reframe. The hardest thing with it is actually getting, like, the grips, for example, used to the fact that, like, you don't have to build a mountain of steel. You can just, like, screw it to the wall. Put a bit of blue tack down. And for the car stuff, I don't think there's a better system for doing car work, and compared to the thing where it's like, the grip spends a 7-hour pre-call rigging, and then the actor sits in the car and you go, I really wish it was panned left a bit, and then they have to undo 75 Allen bolts and move it, and it's never quite. Whereas this, once you got the body in place, I did a feature at the start of the year that was all car racing as well, and even for like high speed stuff, it was just superb.
The camera dynamics inside go from that kind of elegant at the beginning, even glamorous, to the super intense close-ups, and more handheld. I think it sort of intensifies those decisions. Did you plot those out on the timeline, or was it more of an instinctive choice for the modes? Is it?
Some of it is just organic with how the story unfolded and how the feel unfolded on the plane. I don't like to go into something with too strict of a regimen. I like to set some rules about where the camera can be and can't be. Some of that is just about feeling it. I knew that I wanted to be in Sam, Idris's character Sam. I wanted to be in his headspace increasingly as the show progressed. So there were a lot of wide and close shots with him. He's very still as an actor, and he has a huge physical presence, and so I just wanted to be sort of locked to him and in his temples and just kind of in here. And so there was a lot of that. There was a lot of sort of getting into his headspace, and then of course a lot of that subjective long lens POV, which tends to feel more handheld. And we knew we didn't want to be in a world of kind of United 93, very green grass, very long lens, very almost deliberately unbearably watchable, unwatchably. What's the phrase I'm after? Anyway, because we knew we were going to be in that environment for so many hours, but also the action on the plane in this series is generally not frenetic, because the whole plan of the hijackers is they're going to hijack the plane and not do anything until it reaches London.
Slow.
And so a lot of it is about Sam's character and the hijackers biding their time, watching, learning from each other. Sam trying to get under their skin. And so I didn't want it to just be frenetic for frenetic's sake. It is by and large handheld in the hero coverage we were doing, but when someone was moving around the space, we were generally on the 4D or on Steadicam, and I wanted it to feel like the camera was flying inside the plane. So it was like a microcosm of the story. But other than that, I just feel it out with the scenes. Sometimes you want the camera to feel like it's locked to the environment that you're in, and sometimes you want it to feel like the environment is the prison and we're with the character going.
Sure.
And I just think to set too many rules up front restricts you in terms of your storytelling.
I remember having that discussion really early about not sort of bundling down the aisles, holding the top handle. I think Cinema 3 did that so beautifully, and it's wants to leave that standing on its own. And but we looked at, I remember trying to figure out ways that we could do some sort of cable rigs or like hidden. I was thinking, can we split the ceiling and have like an overhead track? And then we're like, but then you're limited, you're just on this axis. And can we do something where you're coming across sideways, and anything sort of cabley is going to dangle, and the Steadicam doesn't quite work. So I mean, that was really the 4D was so perfect for that sort of thing. And I think we did even do some shots where, like, to get across the rows of people, you just pass it to the SAs, and the SA just pass it, pass it across. And we did somewhere we would turn off the stabilization like halfway through a shot. I think that happens towards the end, like it's stable and then the plane hits the ground, and we just flipped everything off, and it just becomes this kind of crazy. And then the operator's just grabbing the lens and doing that kind of stuff, which feels quite fresh. You're trying to find new ways of moving through those spaces. And instinctively, the coverage felt like it was always going to have a bit of handheld energy into it, that it would just have this sort of edge to it.
We wanted the scenes that were not on the plane, which are as important in lots of ways, to be this relief from the stuff on the plane. So the stuff that's on the ground in the season tends to be a little bit more, shooting framing for the space and placing the characters against the space a little bit more, and feeling the stillness and the oxygen versus the sort of confines of the plane.
Yeah, to set up that contrast.
Yeah, I think also that's just a function of, we would go out to a different set or to a different location and be like,
we were so excited.
oh my god,
size. The
camera can be more than a meter away
the cobwebs off the dolly.
Brilliant. And then the aerial photography, I wanted to feel the sort of the fragility of the plane against the sky, and ended up being one or two incredibly well planned, but also quite lucky.
Yeah,
days.
That stuff was. Yeah, I mean, we were planning that for basically the entire shoot, the air-to-air. So Jim was really, clear that he didn't want to use VFX aircraft, for all of the many, that's sort of the only time you do break that rule of coming outside of the cabin. And as it turned out, I don't know if this is just luck or whether it was the plane had been changed to an Airbus because of the air tanker thing.
No, we changed it.
It turns out the RAF used the same type as Airbus A330 as sort of a weird combination of VIP / refueling, so you can call up the RAF and rent one, and they had one that was just completely white. That VFX were like, well, it's going to be really easy. We'll just track the logo on the side, and we did a shoot with an air-to-air shoot over North Wales that covered sort of everything. In which I was in one plane with a camera underneath, and we had two sort of jets that were flown by ex-Red Arrows pilots who were allowed to get really close, but only had sort of half an hour of fuel before they had to. And we all went round and round North Wales for an incredibly intense sort of
I bet.
2 hours.
That was the last day of principal photography on the show.
Right.
And while Ed was doing that, I was shooting an up and past of a car
I
on a
might
motorway.
have put my hand on the scales a bit. I really need to go and direct the area. But then we sent all that stuff to the edit, and there were 3 editors and all the stuff, and then they were just from what I had seen, just having a huge fight over it.
Because
It got the best bits.
They were gasping for that material at that point, and it came in and it was so good. And it was just like, we used as much of it as we could. I didn't want to be too expansive with it, but it's used in a very choice way in the show. But I'm really proud of that stuff too, because it's you go from these incredible, like on a 35mm, like two inches away from Idris's face, to suddenly you're like seeing the curvature of the earth.
It's really the end of episode 3. I'm really proud of for that, in that it cut out from a dramatic moment to an aerial shot, which Jim and the editors managed to cling on to for feels like 2 minutes before the sort of needle drop of the credits, and it's so just to be able to sit on that kind of stuff is lovely.
Just quickly to finish, so 7 eps is a relatively short run for a streaming show. I mean, there's only been a few shows that have done that. The nature of the story, obviously, because it felt so singular, the timeline is that it was obviously steered by you principally, but you did bring in Mo Ali to do some work. So how did that work?
It's all to do with the fact that you can't prep. The only way you can prep for block, we broke it into 3 blocks because we knew that I would have directed the whole thing happily if there was a infinite delivery schedule. But the reality is, they ordered it, and I made an entire other TV show first. So they were not delighted about that. No. And if they had it their way, it's like Apple versus ITV. So Apple are saying, we love this idea, let's go. And I'm like, great, just got to make this whole other TV show first that I've been trying to get made for about 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And it's about this incredibly important topic that's very close to my heart. And they were like, right, well, could we not just... And we did. We compressed up the post schedule on the other show. But at the end of the day, they want and need the show, and they were just basically like, what's the absolute earliest you can give it to us? And we'll take that day. And so and to do that, I couldn't direct the whole thing. Right. So then it's like, well, the benefit of that is you've got more time to prep block 3, and to be cutting block 1 to know how the show's evolving, and then you can feed that back into block 2 and into block 3.
Yeah.
Whereas if you prep the whole thing up front and then I go off to shoot it, I'm in the headspace of shooting the show and just trying to get it done.
Yeah.
And then I'm in post, 4 months later, going, I wish we'd had the luxury of being able to go back in. And we did, we reshot chunks of block 2. We in block 3 reshot bits from block 1. We had the luxury, because the plane was a standing set. We were going back in, and as Ed said, just like sanding down and sharpening up these episodes and just finding that extra, let's just get a look from him to him, and that's going to really sell that moment, or let's get an MCU or a macro detail of this, and the luxury of being able to do that rather than going in and going, right, I've got everything. Shit, no, I don't have everything. I'm going to have to make it work. So we knew we would need someone to direct at least 2 episodes in the middle. It's a tricky job, because it's like you can't change anything. It has to look like this. Yeah. I mean, the great thing was that Ed did DP the entire series, so that was a real blessing, because not just because of the look of the show, but Ed knew how it was being shot, how I was sort of expecting it to be shot, and also was across the aviation side of it too, which I think was a real blessing. And it was the same first AD as well across the entire show. So I was away cutting, and these guys carried on with Mo directing. The cast also, to a certain extent, they're in the mode of the show. They know how it is. So it is a tricky job it would have been a tricky job for a DP to come into that season,
Sure.
I think, and do the second block. So it's great that Ed stayed on, although we did sort of slightly nearly kill you.
A little bit. I think it didn't really click in how long it was until
Yeah.
I think I remember George K texting you like, does Ed know he's got 1,000 scenes to shoot?
Yeah, it was a lot. But I certainly would have. It would have been really tough for me to do that. And, it meant I was able to sort of recover prep block 3,
Sure.
edit, and also
It makes so much sense to have that bit of retrospect and to be able to put that together.
And then to be able to come back in at the end and go like, okay, right, now we can sort of
Yeah.
address all these things.
Well, it worked. I know you've started shooting season 2. Which
Yes.
I'm not sure I can cope with any more stress, but I'm guessing you can't tell us anything about that, which is fine. But what rules or approaches on season 1 do you think you've taken over, or you will take to season 2?
Firstly, I would say we have taken a huge chunk of our crew from season 1, and a lot of them come back. We're very glad to have a lot of people back.
Yes.
And so was Idris, for example, was just like so glad to see so many of these faces, because you sort of feel like you fought a war with some of these people.
Yeah.
Ed's camera team are exemplary, and I was very glad to be able to get so many of them back. And I think it's not especially busy out there right now. I'm sure everyone's feeling that, and we feel blessed to be back and doing more of a show that I love to make, that people seem to really enjoy working on, and also that I get such incredible I feel like love from people about the show, and when they hear that we're making more of it, there feels like there's sort of genuine love for it, and that's not always the case, so it's nice to be bringing back a show that people like, or seem to like. It's hard not to get into your own headspace about that, and you just, at the end of the day, just trying to make tell another good story in the way that's appropriate for that story. And this story that we're telling this season is in lots of ways very, very different from the story of season 1. It's a lot darker and twistier. It's a kind of yin and yang piece for season 1, is how I would describe it. It's got a lot of the DNA of season 1, but it's got its own DNA too. And so I suppose we learnt so much making season 1. There's
things that you would.
Yeah, there's a very claustrophobic element. There's a very claustrophobic element to season 2. So we've been able to take a lot of our learnings on a technical side, but also on a storytelling side. And a lot of the mistakes we made in season 1, we're able to go, well, let's not do that way. We thought that was going to be good, and it turned out it wasn't. But also just being open to what this season's going to throw at us, with 12 days or whatever we are into the shoot. It's a longer shoot than season 1, so we're sort of trying to keep up how to drive. We came from set today in the car, just kind of like,
this is fine.
This is fine. We are fine.
Yes.
I just very glad to be working with Ed again, and such an amazing crew. And
well, it's a duo that clearly works. It's a really impressive piece of work. So congratulations,
Thank you.
Jim and Ed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well done.